everyone, Sue here from 1A Auto, and today I'm going to show you on our 2013 Toyota Camry how to replace a pressed-in wheel bearing in the front suspension. If you need that part or any other part for your car, click on the link below and head on over to 1AAuto.com. So to take the tire off, you need a 19mm socket. Take your tire off. Now I can dismount the caliper, 14mm socket, and we'll disconnect the caliper from the bracket. As you can see, that inner slider pin's spinning on me. So it's a 17mm wrench and a 14 socket, 14mm. Break those free. Gonna get the top bolt too. Take that bolt out. Now we can slide the caliper off the bracket. Here we go. Now we can get that bracket off the caliper knuckle. That should be two 17mm sockets. There's two bolts, one on the bottom and one on the top. I'm going to use a brake caliper hook. Get that caliper up out of the way. And I can. Someone put a lot of red thread locker. Get the top bolt. Take the bracket right out. See if I can get this bolt out of this knuckle. They just kept using a lot of the thread locker. It's really kicked in there. Now the rotor is stuck on the hub. It's pretty normal for that, so you just take a hammer. I'm not going to reuse my rotor, so I can hit it right here on the hub or on the surface. I'm just going to hit the hub though. And there you have it. Now we can take that off and set it aside. Now we're going to take the old cotter pin out of the lower ball joint because we're going to have to discard that. The new ball joint will come with one. And go from there. I just use a pair of cutters. See if I can get it to line up. Make itself a little free in there. Sometimes there's a little ear you can grab from the other side. This one's going to be, it's probably been in their original equipment. Yeah, I got it to move. Good. I can feel the other end with my hand, and I can feel it moving. You'll see the other end now has a little bit more of a lip to it. I can just grab it with the cutters and then pull it out. Perfect. There you go. The nuts on the spindle part of the ball joint are pretty good, so I can only fit an open-end wrench on there. So I'm just going to give it a quick tap. See if I can get it to jolt itself a little free. Notice how I keep my hand on that. If you take your hand off of it and try to hit that, the wrench could just bounce off and hit you. Let's go to the other side. There we go. So it's mostly the vibration of the hammer, not so much the effort of trying to spin the wrench around it. We'll get this off as far as we can go before it hits the axle. And then I'll take the bolts off on the control arm side. And we'll take a pickle fork because we're not going to reuse it. So we can use a pickle fork and break that down. I'm going to take these 3 bolts, 2 nuts and 1 bolt out, 17mm socket. I'm going to use my 1/2-inch breaker bar. You can use air tools if you have air tools at home. I'm going to show you, if you don't have air tools, how to do it. And it can be relatively easy. You can see the pressure as the control arm's going up. That's where the pressure point is. The ball joint pushes it down. Then we can get our pickle fork. I'll just pull down on this. Get that out of the way. Because you take a hammer actually before you get the pickle fork. If you hit right in here, you might be able to jolt that free. All right, look at that pickle fork go that way. This might not work, it might be the wrong size. There you go. Now, if you're reusing that ball joint, you want to try to not use the pickle fork because you can rip the boot just like that. So if you're reusing the ball joint and you need to take it out for some reason, I don't recommend doing it that way. In this case, we're replacing it, so we can just destroy it. Oh, the crease. There we go. We have a jam nut and a castle nut with an old cotter pin. So we're going to take the old cotter pin out and the castle nut off. Oh, looks like someone never completed that job. The castle nut's a 17mm socket. I'm just going to put my 1/2" breaker bar on there and break it free. Take a hammer, and now we're going to hit the knuckle part where that tie rod end spindle goes on there, and I'll jolt it free. Now I'm going to take a pocket screwdriver and I'm going to take the ABS line off of the strut, because you've got to take it out in order to get the knuckle out to do the bearing. So we have to take the ABS off because I have to take it out of the knuckle housing here, and I got to take the wire off the strut. So I'm just going to use like a body tool to get underneath this clip and see if I can slide it. Just detach it. There we go. Oh, I can reuse it. Sweet. So now if I turn it this way, you'll see it looks like it could be a 10mm bolt. I got to get a 10mm and disconnect that ABS sensor where it mounts in the knuckle. Break that free. Let's hope it comes right out. Wonderful. I'm going to put the bolt back in the ABS mounting hole. I just like to do that so it doesn't get lost with the whole knuckle being out. Just easier. So now on a Toyota, the axle nut or spindle nut is a special socket. It has to be a 12.30mm. So you can, it's a, you know, you have to order it or make sure you have one before you do a Toyota axle for the spindle nut. Take that off. Set that aside, and I'm going to spray a little bit penetrating spray in there so that I can hopefully hammer that axle out of the knuckle. Now we got to take the sway bar link and detach it from the strut. Now I'm going to take the strut away from the knuckle, and these are 22mm wrench and socket. You can do this by hand or use an air tool. I'm going to leave the lower bolt in, holding that knuckle in so that I can hit the spindle part and get the CV axle shaft out. Now I can grab this, make sure you get a good hold on that knuckle, and take the bolt out. First thing we're going to do before we start taking the bearing out and pressing it out, we're going to take the backing plate off. That's a 10mm wrench, and I'll just break this free. There's 4 bolts holding that on. Okay. I'm going to tip that upside down like that. Just rock that back and forth. Once we press the hub off, we'll get that out. You got to get this tin shield out of the way, noting that how it lines up with the ABS ring. So I'll just take a little hook that I have, and I'll just pry all the way around. And it will pop right off. I don't want to dent it too much, it's gonna happen, but I'm just saying, be as careful as you can. You can use a pry bar, whatever tool takes it off without bending it. It's magic. Now we have this lock ring in here. We need to get that out of the way. And I'm going to use a pair of long needle nose pliers. I like to use needle nose because they seem to really get in there without the ring pliers. Sometimes work. I don't have great success with them. Actually, I got to get my pocket screwdriver. So with a pair of needle nose pliers, I like to squeeze that tool, this snap ring, and I just put a pocket screwdriver behind there and hold it there while that way I can actually work it around. Now we're going to reuse that. If you need to get a new one, do so. If it bends way too much or is rusted and rotted, it has an important job, so get a new one if you need to. Ours is in good shape, we're going to leave it. Now I'm going to use the press. The first thing I'm going to do is press out the center hub. And that is this piece right here. This big steel piece, that's the bushing. That's the bearing, and this little piece right in here, that's that hub. So we're going to push that straight through. So I've got this set up. We like to save old rotors and stuff like that to help us with leverage. So this is a neat way to use this because it takes no effort to push that hub out. And I've got the actual press bracket holding the knuckle piece. And I'm just going to use a socket and just push the actual hub right out of the bearing. Like I said, it doesn't take much effort to get the spindle, the hub out of the actual knuckle, I mean. And the backing plate always gets bent. That's just the story. So here we have the spindle, which we're replacing because our kit has the option to get a new spindle with lug nuts. I recommend it for the small change that it is. I'd rather put a new hub into a new bearing with new lug nuts than try to heat this up and force it off. It is an option, but we sell both parts, so that's the way I'm going to go. So now with this lock ring out of here on the inside, we're going to press the bearing out this way. Sometimes you just got to use what you have available, and here I have just the bearing is already pushed out of the knuckle. I just got to get down the final rest of the way. And so I'm just going to use some seal pushers. It's a little seal kit, and we'll just push it right through. Just take my Leaning Tower of Pisa out. And there's the bearing. That is a sail bearing that gets pressed into a knuckle. Here we have our new bearing from One Auto and the old bearing and hub that we just took out of our 2013 Camry. So here's your sealed bearing, and here's the new one. See they're the same diameter. You don't want to clank them together, just in case it's a magnetic bearing, because it has an ABS. There is a magnetic ring in there, and you don't want to zero it out by hitting metal on it. So that's a little tidbit there for you. And here is the new hub. You can see the old race set got stuck on the hubs. Now, if you wanted to use that and not buy this separately, you'd have to put this in a vise, heat this up, and when it gets hot and it contracts, you can actually hit it and it pops right off. It's a little bit of, you can watch us do that on YouTube also on another Camry that we've done. But this kit comes with a new axle nut, which is a one-time use only. You're not supposed to reuse the old ones. So it's nice enough that they supply you with it. And if you need this part or any other part for your car, click on the link below and head on over to oneauto.com. So the first thing I'm going to do before I press my new bearing into this knuckle. So I like to take a clean rag, and I'm just gonna gently go around and make sure there's no burrs and no metal inhibiting the new bearing from being pressed in a smooth. Plus I'd like to clean some of the old grease out of there. I could just place it on a nice flat surface and get my new bearing. Place that down in. Now I need an item that is going to be the same diameter. I want to press on the outside, not on the center, and not on this flat piece. That's the magnetic piece. So we're going to press on just the outside edge. So that's why we save old bearings, just like that. Take an aluminum block, balance it out, make sure it's centered. You'll know when to stop because it just basically bottoms out, but you can always stop and raise it up and make sure that you have the lip is completely open for the lock ring. All right about there. I can feel that it just seated basically. A little bit more. There we go, bottomed right out. Release it. Take that ring right out of the way. I bet you thought that was going to freeze it. Thought I was pressing that in, didn't you? Now you can clearly see the nice space for that lock ring is in there. Now we'll tip it around and see that it is definitely seated nice all the way around in there. I'm going to clean this up of any grease and old residue. I like to say that I have a trick for these, but I don't. Just a squeeze and hope one side gets in faster than the other. There you go. Okay, you'll see that it fell right in. And sometimes I like to take a punch, or in this case I'll just use my little pry bar. Make sure that that's seated all the way in. Yeah, I'm gonna go get a punch. So I want that to seat in a little bit more. So now that the bearing's in and the lock clip is in, we can actually put the backing plate back on, and you'll see how it's got some, just give it a good tap with your hammer if it's raised up, and we'll straighten it out once it's all bolted in. You can put the hub on, and then you can put your rotor on, put some lug nuts on, and make sure when you spin it, it doesn't hit in any spot. Tighten up all of them, make sure they're snug. Okay, now it's ready to put the hub in. So there's many ways to do this. I usually like to hold this piece down flat, so you want to make sure that the center part of the bearing here, just the center piece right here, you want to make sure that's locked in. So I'll use a holder like that, just hold the center piece, and usually at that point I'll flip it over this way and press the hub down in. But unfortunately, I'm running out of options here of things that I have to do this with, so I'm going to try it this way. Now it's going to go in with ease. Make sure your backing plate's on, which it is. We're all set there. And now we've got something holding the center of the bearing in place, and I've got an old bearing casing holding the studs up against so that they don't get pushed out. It's up against the front of the hub. And it literally just slides right in. I have done this with a hammer in a socket. I'm going to raise it up, see where we're at. I'm not going to let it go all the way up in case I have to push it down some more. Perfect. That's it. You're all set. I'll raise it out here. That felt fabulous. Now we're going to put this little tin shield back on, obviously lining up the hole for the ABS ring, and I'm just going to tap it down. Work my way around, and hope for the best. Looking good. There we go. Now we're going to install our knuckle with a new bearing. Line it up on the actual CV shaft spindle. There we go. I've got the bolts right here and handy. I know that when I took it out, that the nuts were in the back. The bolts went this way. I'm going to put the top one in. Now there is no camber slot or cutout. So I know that when I want to do an alignment, I want this strut pushed in as far as I can. It's pretty much there because there is no at all ovalness or cutout. So it's going to be pretty close. I'll put the nuts back on. So now we're going to tighten the strut to the knuckle, the two bolts that mounted here. It's 22mm wrench and socket. I'm going to use my 1/2-inch air gun. The torque specs is 214 foot-pounds. And frankly, I don't think everybody wants to see me try to do that. So I'll use my judgment in the sense I'm not going to reef on the air gun. I know what the air gun can do for foot-pounds. So I just gave it, I know it's tight. The metal squeeze, knuckle's good. I'm going to put the new lower ball joint in. Now I think it's going to be easier for me to fish it up into the knuckle and then put it into the lower control arm. So I want this spindle piece turned in as far as I can that way. So I've got it at this angle, so that way I can hopefully work this in. The backing plate probably won't hurt to bend it a little bit. We'll just have to bend it back. There we go. Get that castle nut and put it back on. Now I'm going to try to torque this down before I put the axle in, because then I can use an actual socket. So the new nut on the ball joint is a 21mm. The old one was a 19. Now the torque specs for this is 91 foot-pounds. So do I want to leave the CV shaft in and tighten like I would if I was just doing the ball joint? You could, but at the same time, you're not going to get 91 foot-pounds out of that. So it's just as easy to take the axle nut out, whether you're doing the knuckle bearing or not. Just take the axle nut out, slide it out, helps you do the whole job probably a little easier, and you can actually use a socket, take the old one out. So I'm going to be able to torque that now to 91 foot-pounds. So I'm going to tighten this lower ball joint castle nut. It's a 21mm socket, and I put my 1/2-inch breaker bar in there because the torque is 91 foot-pounds, which is really high. And I'm going to use a pry bar and put it right through where the axle would go through. It's not going to do any damage to it, and that way I can get some good leverage on this and torque this right down. Let's see if the cotter pin lines up. So it's pretty close. I lucked out on that one. Now I'll just put that new cotter pin through, grab my pull the top one over. Cut off the excess. And then I'll spin the side around, and I'll get this side over here. Now we're clear to put the axle back through the center of the bearing, line up the spindles, and at the same time, I'm going to line up the lower ball joint to the control arm. There we go. Get a pry bar. With a pry bar, I can pull down on the control arm. We have the two new lock nuts. They've got the lock washers on them. It's got a reverse little grooves in them that once it's torqued down, tightened, it doesn't back off. And then our one bolt that goes through the top one. Make sure you start everything by hand so you don't cross thread it. So we're going to tighten the lower ball joint to control arm with the two nuts and the one bolt. The two nuts are an 18mm socket. When torquing down the ball joint to the control arm, the manufacturer gives you two choices of replacement nuts, and it's a wider nut or a thinner nut. The thinner walled nut is 55 foot-pounds, and the wider based nut is 68 foot-pounds. We have the wider base here, so I'm going to go with 68. Put my 18mm socket on there and torque this to 68 foot-pounds. And then this one bolt is a 15mm socket. Now we're going to put the outer tie rod end onto the knuckle. We're going to put the stud right through the knuckle housing. Let it seat all the way down on that cone. Put the new castle nut on. I'm going to torque that. It's a 17mm socket. Once I snug it up, I'm going to torque it to the specs, which is 36 foot-pounds. Let's see if the cotter pin lines up. It does. Now I'll put the new cotter pin through. So before we put our new axle nut on that came with the hub, apparently I hit it a little too hard. That's why you really should use a center punch, but sometimes you just use a hammer, and I just knurled over the end thread just a hair. So I want to show you how to take care of that. I have a triangle file here, just a three-sided file, and I'm going to find that where it's flattened over. I'm going to put it right in that groove, and I'm just going to file forward. And it just takes that enough off of it so that the new thread will correct itself. Now that we corrected our threads in the beginning here, we can put the new nut on. I'm going to use an air gun to get it down just before the hub because I have to torque this to the manufacturer's specs with a torque wrench. You don't want to over tighten it with an air gun because that's a pressed in bearing and you'll actually compress the housing and the bearing will get wasted real fast. And you don't want to leave it too loose because then the bearing has play and you'll end up defeating the whole point of it. Now I'm going to put the flex hose bracket with the ABS wire to it back on the strut tower. I'm going to take our caliper, let it dangle down for a second, straighten that hose out. Now this has nice little divots in it of where it's indicated. See the metal tab, how it's off center, has an angle. It's going to go right in that spot right there and mount right like that. And now I can take my flex hose and set it up just like that. Take the bolt. And we hang it back now up on the strut. 12mm socket. Tighten that down. Now we have the ABS wire with the sensor on it. And there's that little plastic clip that I took out of the old one. So this plastic clip goes right into that pre-made slot, clips right in, bring it around the back. Now you can line it up in the actual hole in the knuckle for the ABS sensor. That fits right in there. Make sure it's flush, and then put the mounting bolt in. This is a 10mm socket. Before I put the new rotor on, I'm going to spray the actual hub surface, even though it's brand new and the rotor's new. I'm going to put a little copper anti-seize on that to stop any corrosion from building up. I'm going to put a couple of lug nuts on here to hold this flush against my hub, so when I put my caliper together and bracket on, I don't have to worry about it wobbling around. So now I can mount my caliper bracket to knuckle. I've took a wire brush to all the bolts to make sure there's no grease or any rust or dirt in there. Now these caliper bolt bracket to knuckle is a 17mm socket, and the torque is 79 foot-pounds. So I'm going to snug them up and then I'll torque them down to 79 foot-pounds. Now to install these, I like to put them in at an angle, and then I just bring it around and snap it right into place, just like that. Now holding that, I'm going to take my caliper, slide it right over. Nice. Push in the sliders. Get my mounting bolts. These are 14mm socket. Once you get them bottomed out, we're going to torque them to the factory spec. 14mm socket, and the torque specs from caliper pin to bracket is 25 foot-pounds. I'm going to get a wrench to hold that inner pin from spinning. That should be a 17mm. So 14 bolt head and 17 on the inside. You can do the same to the top. So in order to put enough torque on this spindle nut, I need to stop the wheel from turning. So I'm taking my longest pry bar and I'm putting it through the lug nuts. I'm going to take my 12.30mm socket. Yeah. Now that tells me that when I used my air gun earlier, I didn't even come close to bottoming out, which makes me happy because I didn't want to. So, bravo to me, I did a good job. Torque specs is 217 foot-pounds. So before you torque the axle nut, you want to make sure your car is still in neutral, not in park, because in park you're actually putting strain on the axle, makes sense, and it goes into the gear section of the transmission. And 217 foot-pounds can be too much, and you might actually do some gear damage, chip a gear. So make sure it's in neutral so that the pry bar takes the initial pull of the 217 foot-pounds. Now take your lug nuts off so you can remount your tire. Last step before you put your wheel on, you're going to take a punch and a hammer and push down on this. It's a little tin piece out here and it stops it from backing off. Just want it enough so it sits right in that groove and stops it from moving. 19mm socket. I'm going to hand tighten all the lug nuts, then I'll lower it down and torque it. I'm going to start at the bottom and I'm going to go in a star pattern. And the wheel torque for this Camry is 76 foot-pounds. Double check everything.
Thanks for watching. Visit 1AAuto.com for quality auto parts shipped to your door, the place for DIY auto repair. And if you enjoyed this video, please click the subscribe button.